Hi, welcome back. In this video, I want to show you how to draw this realistic water droplet on a dandelion using graphite pencils. So let's get started. As always, these are the art supplies I'll be using for this drawing, and you can pause the video right here to note them down. I'm using this 250 GSM paper from my ordinary sketchbook, which is available in almost all the art stores or stationeries around the world. So you don't have to use any fancy paper for this specific drawing. And the drawing portion area is 5 × 8 inches. I've decided to divide the whole portion into 1 × 1 inch grid boxes. And for that, I'm marking all consecutive numbers on the scale using a B pencil. Now I'm adding these small lines very carefully on all the remaining sides as well. Now as all the markings are in place, let's join them together to create 8 rows and 5 columns. Okay, so now let's move on to the outlining process, and after analyzing the reference image, I'm starting from the water droplet portion. I'm using masking tape to draw the perfect round outline for the droplet. You can also use a compass or any round object for this purpose. Moving on to the dandelion part, and I'm firstly marking the stem portion and adding a slightly curved line starting from the top. To nail the outlines, you have to focus on one box at a time and carefully note where the outlines meet the grid lines. Now it's time to add curved lines and strokes for this fur type texture on the top of the dandelion, which is also known as Papa's disc. But I know you also don't care about its name, so let's call it fur of the dandelion. Coming back to the water droplet, and I'm completing the grid now so that it becomes easy for you to add the details in it. After completing the grid, I'm adding some strokes inside the droplet to trace down the reflections in it. And that is how we are done with the outlining process in just a few minutes. Before starting the shading and detailing process, as always, I'm masking the edges of the drawing paper using a masking tape to avoid the spill of graphite over the borders. Okay, so as the tapes are in place, I'm firstly adding indentation lines for the top portion of this dandelion seed. I'm using a nail art dotting tool and going over and in between the outlines we have added earlier. This will help us in achieving the bright and thin strokes just like the reference image. As we can see in the reference image that the background is darker from some of the areas and is lighter from others. So I'm adding the background with a pea graphite powder using a bigger size dry brush. If you don't have a graphite powder kit, you can make one at home by watching this video from the cards. Notice that I'm only adding graphite powders in the areas which are darker in the reference image, and then blending the whole portion using a tissue paper. The excessive graphite from the darker areas will stick to the tissue paper, and when you will rub it on the lighter areas, it will add a very smooth and soft base over them. Make sure to use circular scribbling motions while blending the background to achieve desired blended base. I'm also dipping my tissue into the graphite powder and layering it on the darker areas as well. Before adding the more depth on the background and droplet, I'm carefully darkening some of the strokes as they are about to fade away by using a 2B pencil. Now it's time to layer the graphite on the darker areas, and I'm using the same B graphite powder with my bigger size dry brush. Try to avoid back and forth motion while adding this layer as it will make the whole area look patchy and uneven. I'm going back and forth with my tissue paper and brush to achieve the required depth in the background. Okay, so let's move on to the water droplet detailing, and I'm using my 8B pencil. I'm firstly darkening the strokes by keeping the pressure relatively high on my pencil, and then shading the area by keeping the angle low and applying variable pressure to achieve the required gradient. I'm repeating the similar process for the rest of the droplet as well. But keep on relating to the reference image during this whole shading process, as one wrong placement will make the end result look deformed. I'm also adding the 3D base layer by using pressure technique to achieve the required depth. In pressure technique, you have to apply higher pressure and layer graphite onto the areas which are darker in the reference image, and leave the areas which have highlights or lighter texture. And by the way, you can get access to our premium content and support this channel through Patreon. You can sign up through different membership levels and get access to all the outline and grid references, etc. We have an ever-growing library of hundreds of exclusive and real-time tutorials, and you will also get access to 4 new tutorials every month. You can also post your artworks in our active community of patrons and participate in our weekly critique sessions where I give my honest and positive critiques on your artworks, so you can improve your skills and get better with your drawing. Visit the link in description and become a premium member today. Okay, so when the darker base is done, it's time to blend this layer very carefully using a bigger size blending stump. I'm going over all the areas in circular motions to achieve a smooth layer. After blending, some of the shades faded away, so I'm going over all the areas and layering the graphite using my 8B pencil. Okay, so now it's time to add the highlights, and I'm using my perfection eraser for this purpose. After paying attention to the contours and reflections within the droplet, I'm going over the lighter areas to pick up the excessive graphite. I'm applying lighter pressure and circular motions for the softer highlights. And to add brighter highlights, I'm using back and forth motion and keeping the pressure high. Carefully add all the reflections by analyzing the reference image more oftenly. The lower and right portion has a very bright highlight, and I'm using my flat tip mono zero eraser. I'm carefully going over the outline of the droplet, and this will immediately make it look realistic. Just like this. I'm also adding this brighter highlight at the bottom of the droplet using the same mono zero eraser. Make sure to clean the tip of the eraser more frequently to increase its effectiveness. This darker line in between the edge and highlight is looking a little bit dark. So to tone it down, I'm using my perfection eraser and carefully going over it with a very light pressure. The droplet is looking a little bit deformed from this portion. So to adjust this, I'm again adding the required outline by using the same masking tape for the guide. Now I'm picking up the excessive graphite inside the outline to make the droplet look perfectly round and 3D. And then using my mono zero eraser to add brighter highlights and blending the edges using a perfection eraser later on. Okay, so before moving further with the detailing process of dandelion, I'm firstly layering the graphite onto this portion under the droplet. I'm using my 8B pencil with a very low angle and pressure to achieve the required depth. Along with darkening the background, I'm also darkening the stem and seed portion using the same pencil. Now I'm using my blending stump and carefully going over the edges of the recently added darker layer to blend it with the background. I'm using small circular motions while blending this layer. Also notice that I'm changing sides of my blending stump depending upon the area I'm working on. I'm using the dirtier side for the darker areas and then switching towards the clean side to blend the lighter areas, along with toning down some of the darker areas. The stem and seed portion is still looking a little bit dull and thin, so I'm again going over them to achieve the required thickness and depth. Now blending the edges to create a soft and blurry texture using a blending stump. Okay, so now to make the stem 3D, I'm using my perfection eraser with a sharp tip and adding these small strokes on the left side of it. I'm also using the same perfection eraser to add these dots and lighter texture onto the seed part. And look how these few highlights have made the overall portion look 3D and realistic. That's why I always insist on adding small intricate details while working on realistic or hyper-realistic drawings to make them stand out. The shade on the right side of the seed looks a little bit dull, so I'm adjusting it using my 8B pencil and blending it afterwards. I'm adding the remaining highlights to match the portion with the reference image. Moving on to the top portion of the dandelion, and I'm using my perfection eraser to add these strokes. I'm adding these strokes by analyzing the reference image and then replicating their placement. Add a mixture of curved and straight strokes by using a variable pressure to achieve the required texture. Also notice that for the lower portion, I'm adding these softer, thin strokes by flicking the eraser in one go. This will result in straight strokes with a very thin end. I'm adding such softer clusters on the remaining portion as well. Now it's time to make those indentation lines shiny, and I'm using my flat tip mono zero eraser and going over the lines. This will help us in removing the excessive graphite from the grooves of the indentations, and it will result in bright yet thin strokes. I'm repeating this similar process and going over all the indentations we have added earlier to make them pop up even more. Okay, so to add the final touches to the drawing, I'm firstly sharpening the tip of my electric razor and then adding these small dots. I'm also going over the previous highlights using the same electric razor to make them more shiny and bright. And with this last step, we are done with this quick and easy realistic water droplet on Dandelion. Creating these free tutorials needs a significant amount of time and energy. So if you found this valuable, please show your support by liking the video. Your support keeps me inspired to bring you more creative content. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.